Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. So it's been a while. I've been kind of busy with a lot of stuff, but I wanted to do a presidential tier list. As you know, this channel is dedicated to geography, history, gaming, a lot of different things. So with that in mind, I'm going to be doing a tier list, but for presidents. So it's kind of like what they do with like some video game tier lists, but this time for presidents. I'm mostly going to be judging presidents based on what they actually did while they were in office. But for a few presidents where they did like a lot more outside of the office of the president, I'll take that into consideration. But I'm not going to let it override what they did in the office for good or for bad. So with that in mind, I have the tiers here. I have S, A+, A minus, all the way down until D minus, and then F will just be on its own. So basically the way to look at this is if the president is C, I think that the good and bad kind of are equal. If I think they're C plus or higher, I think that means that they did more good than bad. And if they're C minus or below, I think they did more harm than good. Basically, I think that they left the country in a worse place because of their actions that they took as president. With that in mind, there's another thing I want to add is that sometimes presidents are just unlucky in the timing that they are president. That does not necessarily mean that the bad things that are happening while they are president is their fault. But how they respond to it is their fault. So, for example, if a president is president during the time of a recession or an economic downturn, that might not be their fault. But how they respond to it says a lot about them as a president, in my opinion. So, I will be taking into consideration the times, the norms of their presidency. But I'm not going to let that override the fact that they were a bad president if they were bad, or override them if they were good, So with that out of the way, I'm going to start with the three presidents that I think perfectly encapsulate a C-tier president. And that's going to be all the presidents that died really early on in the presidency. So Zachary Taylor, James Garfield, who's the other one? Oh yeah, and then William Henry Harrison. These are all the presidents that died very early in the presidency. And I'll put them in order of their tiers at the very end. So at the very end, I'll be like, okay, is this president better than this one? And I'll kind of go back and forth. So with that out of the way, let's start with the first president. And then I'll also say a little bit why I think each president is in which tier. I'm not going to go full in depth. It's not going to be like super long. If you want some more reasonings about why I placed a president in a certain tier or why they are above a certain president, just ask in the comments and I'll respond. I'll respond to every single comment that this video gets. And then shameless plug, please like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend, do all the algorithm things. That would be greatly appreciated. So with that out of the way, let's start with, we already got our first three C presidents: William Henry Harrison, Zachary Taylor, and James Garfield. So now we're starting at the very beginning. George Washington, the founding father, the very first president, the one that set the tradition of 2 terms. Although, to be fair, he didn't even want to do his second term. He was done with this shit after the first term. He didn't want to be president anymore. Let's see. He did a lot of good handling negotiations with the French and the Great British. He established the cabinet and what they're supposed to do. He, showed leniency towards people involved in the Whiskey Rebellion, but still handled it effectively, preventing it from turning the country into complete chaos and anarchy. With that in mind, I think A+ is fitting. A plus. Why not S? He's not S because I think there's only one president who's actually S tier, and you'll see why in a bit. So next president is John Adams. He was the vice president under George Washington. He's the one that established the Navy, established Library of Congress, effectively avoided a war with the French, even though his own political party wanted him to do it. He was an abolitionist, like extremely anti-slavery, handled the economy well, handled basically everything well. Except for he did the Alien and Sedition Acts, which restricted immigration, made immigration harder, gave president the power to deport people, and was restricted on free speech. But, to be fair, only 10 people were indicted on charges. And the Alien and Sedition Acts was veto-proof, meaning that even if he did veto it, it wouldn't have mattered. But I think that does hold him back. But I think he did a better job of handling things than George Washington did, actually, as a president. So with that in mind... Oh, and he's the one that set the actual standard for peaceful transition of power. Because he wanted to be president for a second term. But he lost. And he decided not to be a dictator, you know? So I think that also puts him in A+. I think that's... maybe A. I don't know. He isn't as transformative or impactful as George Washington. So I think A is fair. Next is Thomas Jefferson. Obviously, did the Louisiana Purchase. The Louisiana Purchase is the most successful deal out of all deals, business deals, deals between countries, out of any deal ever made between countries. Like what was the price of it? Hold on. Price of Louisiana Purchase in today's terms. In today's money, I guess I should say. If it sold today, it'd be $340 million. But that land, the land that he actually purchased, has like a $60 trillion price tag, if you had to put a price on it. The most navigable riverways in the world, it's insane. And this purchase allowed us to become a country that was from one side of the continent to the other. Like, it gave us that power. He also set up the Lewis and Clark expeditions, which had us exploring all the way out to Oregon and Washington. So yeah, very transformative president. But he also did the Embargo Acts, which was terrible. He cut the Navy, which was terrible. The Embargo Acts were terrible for the economy. And cutting up the Navy, you'll see why that's terrible in a little bit. A country that's just starting off, is brand new, should not be depleting their military, especially when there's so many hostile forces surrounding you. So that definitely holds him back. He was a ruthless slaveholder. That holds him back. But the Louisiana Purchase cannot be understated. That's just huge. So I think A tier is fair. Next is James Madison. So James Madison continued the policies of Jefferson. They were both Democratic Republicans. I know that sounds confusing to people who don't know about early American politics. The Democrat Republicans is not the Democrat Republicans of today. Let's see. So I will give credit to Madison for things outside of the presidency that he did. Like, he is the one that wrote the Bill of Rights at the Constitutional Convention, which is huge. But outside of that, his actual presidency was kind of bad. So he continued the policies of the Embargo Acts, continued the policies of cutting the military spending, and yet he convinced Congress to have us go to war against Great Britain, the War of 1812. Now, he handled it okay. Like, I mean, he could have done a lot better, but in the end, we kind of won the war. It's I mean, our capital got burnt to the ground, so that's terrible. But at the end of it all, it renewed our patriotism. It got rid of the sectional tensions that were already forming over slavery at the time, and would eventually lead to the era of good feelings. I think, all things considered, he's considerably worse than Adams and Jefferson because he doesn't have any grand accomplishments besides the Bill of Rights, which he didn't do while president. But overall, I think B is probably fine. I think he's a B president. Next is James Monroe. James Monroe is responsible for the Monroe Doctrine, which is a doctrine that says that the European powers can't interfere in the Western Hemisphere. Now, we didn't have the power at the time to back this up, but we made a treaty with Great Britain, and that they would use their navy to back it up. But it's funny because they would still interfere. But it did lessen the interference. He was responsible for the era of good feelings. He went on a goodwill tour all over America. I think he's pretty transformative. I think A is probably fine. Next is John Quincy Adams. He was the one who actually wrote the Monroe Doctrine. He was also an abolitionist lawyer. He also fought in Congress for I think 18 or 17 years after he was done being president, fighting for the policies of abolitionism and the things that he believed in. I think he's better than James Madison because he didn't get us involved in a disastrous war. He handled, trade relations and border disputes effectively. But again, I have to say that this is about what they did as president for the most part. So with that in mind, he's not as transformative as Monroe or Adams or Jefferson even. But he's not as disastrous as Madison. So I think B plus is probably fine. Well, I gotta turn my music down just a little bit. Okay, next is Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson, he expanded democracy by getting rid of the land requirement for voting, which is good. But then he did the Trail of Tears against a Supreme Court order that told him he was unconstitutional. He was constantly abusing his authority. He did not act presidential. He was in constant scandals. He got rid of the National Bank, which was terrible for the economy, would set up a later recession. He handled the nullification crisis where South Carolina said that they didn't have to follow federal laws if they don't want to. He's like, yeah, you do have to, which is good. But it was bad because he caved to what they wanted anyways. I think I almost want to say F, but I think there are presidents who are slightly worse than him. So I'm going to put him in D minus. Martin Van Buren, he just kind of continued the legacy of Andrew Jackson, except for he was even worse when it came to the Trail of Tears. So, again, D minus. John Tyler, let's see. Oh yeah, he was the president that was after William Henry Harrison. He fired William's entire cabinet. Let's see. What did he do domestically? I know he annexed Texas. I know that was a big thing that he did. Domestic affairs. Let's see. Okay, so he vetoed a bunch of tariffs. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Yeah, clinging to the states' right doctrine. I just don't see any redeeming qualities outside of annexing Texas. Let's see, foreign stuff. What did he do foreign affairs wise? This music's a little too dramatic, no? Let's do lo-fi music. Let's see. Send a key diplomatic mission to China. That's good. Let's see. Extended the principles of Monroe Doctrine to Hawaii. That's good. Okay. Settled the dispute over Maine and Canada. Okay. Wow. So it's like, let's see. Let's start him here. And then we'll move them like up or down based on good or bad things. Okay, so let's see. Failed to do infrastructure projects. Failed to do tariff reform. And then also I do have to say, he was an actual traitor. He fought for the Confederacy when the Civil War broke out. So that puts him like down here. But then annexation of Texas, really, really good. Establishing Monroe Doctrine, really, really good. Or not establishing, enforcing. And then opening up trade relations with China. Pretty good. So I'll put him like right here. D+. Polk. Okay, so Polk, he did the Mexican-American War, which I view unfavorably. I don't think the war was essential. I think if you read into like the memoirs of like Grant and other high-ranking generals, or the memoirs of like Lincoln, like other congressmen who had a vote on that war, it seems pretty clear that the war was avoidable and we could have handled the border disputes diplomatically. Thousands of people died. There was obviously some good that came out of it in that we got Arizona, New Mexico, California admitted as a territory and then eventually states. But like that was also because he wanted to expand slavery. So I view that as pretty bad. But good, he did handle some treaties with Great Britain. Some treaties that got us Oregon, Washington, parts of Idaho. He lowered tariffs, which was very, very good. Let's see, what else did he do? He balanced the budget, I'm pretty sure. So pretty good president. Pretty actually transformative in that the gaining of the territory that we did gain was what allowed us to become a superpower. Very similar to Jefferson in that sense. But the fact that he did it through, in my view, a pretty unconstitutional war. I wouldn't say unconstitutional, but a war that isn't really wasn't justifiable at the time. We can look back at it with hindsight to say that it's good and what the outcomes were, but like right now I'm reading the memoirs of Grant, and he is basically saying that it was completely unnecessary and we could have easily sent a diplomatic mission to Mexico to establish a peaceful trade relationship and negotiate the border disputes. So I'm going to put him in either B+ or A-. I think A- for now. Because it did allow us to become a superpower, which is huge. Probably more important than anything that John Quincy Adams did. John Quincy Adams did a lot, actually. He expanded the Cumberland Road, which is our first highway system. By the way, Cumberland Road, that was done under Madison. That was pretty good. I don't know. I'll put him in A- for now. Next is Fillmore. Okay, so Fillmore is responsible for that one great compromise that enforced the Fugitive Slave Act, but also did a rebalancing of slave versus non-slave states. And he opened up trade with Japan, which is pretty good. Oh, and when Civil War broke out, he commanded a force in Buffalo, New York, to prevent, Great British troops from Canada coming down and taking advantage of us while we were in Civil War. So that's pretty good. Nothing like transformative though. Nothing huge. I think like either C plus or B minus is probably fair. Kind of kept the status quo. He delayed the Civil War, which I actually think is good, because if we went to Civil War during his presidency, the North would have lost, probably. They were not fully industrialized yet. Franklin Pierce, he kind of undid everything good that Fillmore did. He did do the Gadsden Purchase, which secured some land in Arizona. Not huge, but fair. But then he did the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which said that those two states could vote for themselves based on popular sovereignty on whether or not they wanted slavery or freedom. Now, this seems okay-ish, until you realize that it caused a mini civil war, like a little miniature civil war in those two states, where hundreds of people moved there to try to establish what they wanted, and then they started killing each other. So F tier, basically completely contributed to the Civil War. Then there's James Buchanan. When Lincoln gets elected at the end of Buchanan's presidency, that in-between stage, states started to secede, and he did nothing. And then also his own Secretary of War was giving out war plans, munitions, information, weapons to the South. So that's also a failed presidency, complete F. Then there's Abraham Lincoln, S tier. He did the thing that all the founding fathers couldn't, which was solve, the first sin of America, slavery. With the Emancipation Proclamation, thousands of men would become free. He won the Civil War, which was no easy feat. He constantly rotated generals around, fired ineffective ones. He, negotiated with France and Great Britain and Spain, all who wanted to get involved in the Civil War and take advantage of it so they could, divide the country. He did the Homestead Act, which allowed immigrants, poor white people, and recently freed slaves to gain access to land for westward expansion, all relatively easily. He did the Land Moral Grant Act, which basically established a public university system. Look up your university. If you go to school, look it up, or you went to school, look it up and see if your school was created because of the Land Moral Grant Act. The majority of public universities outside of the Northeast, especially in the Midwest, a lot of them were established because of the Land Moral Grant Act. He did the Pacific Railroad Act, which got the ball rolling on the Great Railroad system of America. So yeah, just insanely good. Even outside of the Civil War, even if you didn't account for the Civil War, he would be at least an A tier president because of all those other things. But then Civil War and Emancipation, S tier, the only one. Then he dies, and his vice president becomes president. The first motion to impeach a president was during his administration, because he kept vetoing all the civil rights acts and stuff. He just wouldn't budge on anything. I guess he secured a purchase of Alaska from Russia, but that was started under Lincoln. Let's do. You don't even need to know anymore. I mean, he vetoed every Civil Rights Act legislation and completely botched Reconstruction. F tier. Grant established the Department of Justice, negotiated treaties with Great Britain where they had to pay us for ships that were destroyed, trade ships that were destroyed during the Civil War. What Let's see, do. Let's see. Grant domestic affairs. Yeah, Reconstruction. Ratified the 15th Amendment. Let's see. Instituted martial law in 9 counties in South Carolina, and then used federal troops to restore law. Let's see. Was pretty good on fiscal policy. Let's see. Pretty good in regards to Native American affairs. And then there was a lot of scandals, corruption in his cabinet. That's pretty bad. Let's see. Let's see foreign affairs. Yeah, the Alabama claims. Let's see. Also, there was some, let's see, unresolved disputes over fishing rights. Nice. Okay. I think it's all pretty good. And then the fact that he was the general that like is mostly responsible for America winning the actual Civil War. I'm going to take that into consideration and put him in A-. Let's see. Next is Hayes. Hayes is an abolitionist lawyer. He fought in the Civil War. He fought for civil service reform, basically ending the long-standing tradition of you put people in political jobs or government jobs, not based on their qualifications, but based on how much they paid you while you were running for office. He ends that. He makes it about merit and about qualifications. What else did he do? I know he had some good foreign policy stuff, right? Let's see. Did a treaty with China, allowing Chinese immigration to the United States. That's pretty good. Oh wow, this is the very start of plans to create the Panama Canal. That's actually pretty huge. Okay, let's see domestic stuff. Yeah, we already know. Okay, so yeah, he became president and Reconstruction came to an end, although it was kind of already ending because it was unsustainable. I think there was only like 3 towns that he pulled federal troops out of because the rest already didn't have federal troops. Oh yeah, he was president during a economic recession. Let's see. Then a general strike occurred. Let's see. I'm drinking my coffee out of a presidential mug. It's a coffee mug that has the signature of every president up until Bill Clinton. So this mug is older than I am. Found it at a Goodwill for 99 cents. Let's see. They urged Hayes to use federal troops. Let's see, but he rejected. But he did. Okay, so he did send troops to preserve order, but they didn't take one side or another. Okay. Nice. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's see. He was in favor of the gold standard, which for the time was good. Wow, he totally turned the economy around. Lowered inflation. Let's see. Under Hayes, the federal government appropriated several millions of dollars annually to support Native Americans who had been forced off their lands and onto unsustainable reservations. Let's see. His government saw limited reforms in the Indian Bureau. Yeah, I think he's pretty good. Not transformative, so I can't put him anything above B. I think B plus. I think B plus is fair. All right, next is Chester Arthur. He's the one that becomes president after Garfield is killed. Not really transformative in really any way or another. He kind of continues the civil service reform of Hayes, but like, and Garfield was also doing it, but nothing transformative. He expanded the Navy. Okay, every president was doing that. I think C plus is probably fair. Next is Grover Cleveland. So this is the first president that is president for one term, isn't president, and then becomes president for another term after someone else was president in between those two terms. So 2 non-consecutive terms. What did Grover Cleveland do? He lowered tariffs. He committed to a gold standard currency. What was his foreign affairs like? Let's see. See, Britain had amassed holdings in Venezuela. Venezuela asked the United States to arbitrate a territory dispute. Let's see. Threatened Great Britain with war, basically enforcing Monroe Doctrine. Sent U.S. naval vessels to confront British warships near Venezuela. And then Great Britain accepted arbitration. Let's see. Sent a small detachment of Marines to Panama. Let's see, to quash a rebellion. Okay. Huh. Okay. I think I got a good idea of where I want to place him. I think he's definitely better than Cleveland. I think he's better than Fillmore. I think he's probably B tier. Okay. Because currency stuff, tariff reform was all really, really good. Oh, and then there was an economic crisis that happens when he's president. He doesn't handle it that well, actually. I mean, he doesn't do anything bad per se, but he vetoes infrastructure project bills that would have created jobs. He vetoes a bill that would have given Civil War veterans pensions. So yeah, I'm going to put him back down to B-, because that's pretty bad. Let's see. Next president is old Benjamin Harrison. Okay, Benjamin Harrison. He passes the McKinley tariff, one of the worst tariffs in American history, creates the worst economic recession economic crisis up until the Great Depression. This depression is even worse than the 2008 recession, by the way. So terrible. Also was involved in the Indian Wars, where he sent U.S. Army troops that would eventually kill a bunch of Native Americans. But he was a good civil service reformer. He was all for the whole meritocracy stuff in government. He created the national forest system, which is pretty huge. Let's see, what else did he do? I know he had some good foreign policy wins, actually. Yeah, he convened the first Pan-American Conference, negotiated the establishment of a protectorate over the Samoan Islands. Let's see. Appointed Frederick Douglass to be the minister to Haiti. Let's see. Prevented war with Chile, and then had them pay reparations to us. Let's see. Stood firm against Great Britain and Canada to protect the over-harvesting of seals in the Bering Sea. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty good. Domestic affairs stuff. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, the tariff stuff is really, really bad. So it's like, okay, let's take a look at them. We go tariff stuff, really, really bad. And then we go national forest system, really good. And then let's see, what else did he do? Expanded the Navy, really good treaties. I think C+, actually. I think Benjamin Harrison gets too much hate. I'm in a Discord server that's dedicated to people learning about presidents or just talking about presidents. And I do think that the McKinley tariff that he passed was horrific. But I think in the long term, the economic fallout was pretty bad. But did it destroy the country? No. Did it lead to long-lasting damaging effects to the country? Debatable, but I'd say probably not. I mean, literally 2 presidents later, we'll have the president that takes us into being an actual superpower. So I don't think it's that bad. And then when you look at creating the national forest system, that's pretty good. So I think I'll put him in C+ actually. Okay. McKinley. Let's see. He was president for the Spanish-American War, which is actually pretty good. I think people get caught up in the whole talking about yellow journalism and how the war is bad. The imperialism part of it is bad. I think the Philippines War and what we do to the Philippines is bad, but I think the notion of getting Spain out of Cuba and Puerto Rico is all pretty good. I think getting Guam is pretty good. They were better off with us and being under our sphere of influence than they would under Spain. So I think that's pretty good. But what's bad is the tariff that Harrison signed was the McKinley tariff. It was his idea. He is the one that authored it. So I am gonna hold that against him, kind of. What else did he domestically? Let's see. Oh my god, he increased tariffs even more. Jesus. Let's see. Did little to address the exclusion of black Americans. Let's see. Yikes. Okay. Let's see. Okay. He did want to strengthen the Sherman Antitrust Act, but he still believed that there were such things as good trusts. Appointed various labor leaders to government positions. That's pretty good. Created the Erdman Act, which created a mechanism for mediating wage disputes on interstate railroads. That's pretty good. As well as the support of exclusion of Chinese workers. That's pretty bad. Okay. Was pretty mid regarding civil service. Okay. Mid on race relations, mid on civil service, good on Spanish-American War, bad on how he dealt with the Philippines and tariffs. And then, I think... Oh, yeah, and then he also was instrumental in securing the Panama Canal. So, I think I'll do, like, B-, maybe C+. I mean, it was his tariff, but it was Benjamin Harrison who signed it as president. So I think I'll put him in B-. But then he raised them. Okay. Yeah, then he raised them. So I'm going to do C+. Yeah. Okay. Next is Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy, let's see, created the Food and Drug Administration. Did a bunch of trust busting, but again, also he thought that there was such a thing as good trusts. But he did more trust busting than McKinley, Harrison, Cleveland, all combined. No, yeah, I know he's a lot more domestic accomplishments. I know there's a lot more. Let's see. Yep, regulator, square deal. Created the National Forest System. Let's see. Yep. Created the Meat Inspection Act, Pure Food and Drug Act as well. Invited Booker T. Washington to dine with him at the White House, but again, kind of mid on race relations and civil service reforms. Although he was very quick to crack down on corruption scandals within the administration and government in general. Foreign affairs. Yeah, the Philippines, terrible. But he was the one that did the final establishment of the Panama Canal. He actually visited it personally. That's pretty crazy. Let's see. Germany and Great Britain sent ships to blockade Venezuela's coastline. Let's see. He did an arbitrator of territory disputes. Oh yeah, he also got a Nobel Peace Prize for negotiating the end of the Russian-Japanese War. During his 10 years as president, he built the U.S. Navy into one of the largest in the world. Okay. let's see. In December, a fleet of 16 battleships left Virginia and traveled around the entire world. Okay, wow, it's pretty cool. Yeah, I think like major domestic reforms. I think, and then like how he established the Panama Canal, and then his trip with the Navy around the world. Puts him like right here. And then when you go, okay, well, oh yeah, and then that the conservation, put him here. And then you go, okay, well, treatment of the Philippines, bad, very bad actually. And I think probably either A minus or A. Let's say A for now. Taft continued the trust busting trend. It was actually more of a trust buster than Theodore Roosevelt, but he didn't really have any major accomplishments outside of that. He failed in tariff reform. He failed in civil service reform. He continued the like slowly deteriorating civil rights, respect towards black people, and no major foreign policy wins. I mean, he did what was called dollar diplomacy instead of gunboat diplomacy, which is where he rejected Theodore and McKinley's notion of like having a strong navy and using the navy to enforce foreign policy goals, and instead he was like, how about we use our economy and manipulate our currency to do such things? I don't know. Whenever I see a president that doesn't really have any major wins, they just kind of like continue the status quo. I want them to be in C tier, but like the status quo that he was preserving was actually pretty good. I think I'll just do like B. Just B. Woodrow Wilson. Let's see. He's the one that did the Freedom Agenda. So that was 8-hour work day. Couldn't get it passed for everyone, but federal employees and railroad workers got the first glimpse of an 8-hour work day. Restricted child labor. So he couldn't end child labor that wouldn't come until later, but he was able to temporarily make it to where if an item was created or manufactured at a factory that had child labor, it couldn't be transported across state lines. Let's see, what else did he do? I know he created the Federal Reserve, and the FTC and FCC, which all was good at stabilizing our currency, and basically led us into being a economically backed superpower, not just a naval backed superpower. Let's see. Created the Labor Board, the Department of Labor. Let's see what else. Did a bunch of trust busting just like the previous presidents. And especially went after companies that were abusing child labor and also abusing women in the workplace. He's the one that got the 19th ratified, although he could have done it sooner, but he eventually did get it passed. Women's suffrage, that's like pretty huge. He was president during World War I. And he was very effective in the overarching strategy of how we got involved in World War I and what we did when we were there. He effectively did mass mobilization, using the entire economy and all of its mechanisms to ensure that the country was ready for war. And then we had like the lowest casualty rate out of any country involved in that war. Like in terms of like casualty per capita and like based on how long we were there. Like even though we weren't there from the very start, even taking that into consideration, our casualty rate was very, very low comparatively. After the war, he did the whole 14 points thing, did the Treaty of Versailles, which, by the way, there is a YouTube video that talks about some of the myths of the Treaty of Versailles. I should probably link it. But basically, there's a whole myth surrounding the Treaty of Versailles that says, like, that's the reason why Nazi Germany was able to rise to power and, start World War II. If you're not going to watch the video, I'll just explain it, is that that's a myth. The actual reason that the Nazi Germany was able to rise to power was not because of the Treaty of Versailles, but it's because of the lack of the enforcement. So it's because we didn't actually enforce it. We actually started giving up on it, and like we started saying, "Oh yeah, it's fine, Germany. Don't pay your reparations. Oh yeah, it's fine. Go ahead and annex some more territory and expand your navy." Yeah, it's the fact that we didn't enforce it, which I'll explain with later precedents. But I think the actual treaty was good. I mean, it's very comparable to other treaties at the time. And because of Woodrow Wilson, you have countries like Poland, Czech Republic, that all gained their independence. I mean, like, so many countries were able to gain their independence. At the same time he's doing World War I, by the way, he's also handling border disputes between Mexico and our southern border, where revolutionaries in Mexico in literal gangs are just coming into the country and killing people that live in those border towns. So those are all like great transformative things. And then you have to think, okay, well, the bad things are, the restrictions of free speech, the imprisonment of people who were outspoken against the war. Again, just like John Adams, these were veto-proof things. What else were bad? Lack of, civil rights. I mean, he did play the KKK movie at the White House, although to be fair, he later denounces it. And then also the whole reason why he played that movie was just because it was like the first movie, that was like that. So it's still very, very bad. It's still very bad. But he's a transformative president, so he has to go in A tier. I don't know. I think like A- is probably fine. We'll put him there for now. Let's see. Next is Harding. Considered the most corrupt president, at least up until that time. You got the Teapot Dome scandal. He also increased... Oh, yeah, I forgot to say, Wilson lowers tariffs, and then this motherfucker raises tariffs. He cuts taxes on the wealthy. He starts the process of leniency towards Germany. I think a lot of his policies kind of lead us into the Great Depression. So I think with that in mind, I think we'll do like D+ for now. And then there's Coolidge, same thing. Continues a lot of the policies of Harding. He fails to get an anti-lynching bill passed because he used all of his political capital to try to pass a tax cut. Passes the most restrictive immigration bill in American history. This bill, by the way, is what's used to prohibit Polish refugees from entering the United States in the Holocaust. So that's like insanely bad. He did do some good in that he was able to get Native Americans their citizenship, but by that time about 80% of Native Americans were already citizens anyway through like marriage or land acquisition. So not transformative and actually bad. So he has to go here. Herbert Hoover. The crazy thing is, outside of the presidency, Herbert Hoover was amazing. I mean, he was in charge of a refugee crisis during World War I. He was and like did amazing things there. Um, he was like what's someone called that gives a lot of charity money to people? What's the word for that again? I forget the word for it. I don't know why, but philanthropist. He was a great philanthropist, saving millions and millions of lives outside of the presidency. As president, he increased taxes during the Great Depression and then made it worse by also increasing tariffs. So, although to be fair, that was the advice given to him by Coolidge, but I think that's still very bad. I also think, oh yeah, the other thing about Coolidge is Coolidge would like sleep for 16 hours a day because of his depression. Um, I mean, to be fair, his child just died, but like that's not presidential. Just resign. Like to be a president, you have to have an ego. You know, like every single one of these guys has to have an ego, but there's degrees to it. You know, there's levels to it, and I think his level was actually much higher. Like people are like, "Oh, Silent Cal, he didn't talk much." I was like, "Yeah, he didn't talk much. It doesn't mean he didn't have an ego. Like he wasn't boisterous about it." But if you're sleeping 16 hours a day on the job, like any other job, you would get fired. So yeah, I think Coolidge is actually terrible, and he gets so much glaze. Like people will put him in like A tier or B tier. Like let's just do this. Ready? Presidential tier list. Reddit. Let's just see. This guy, Calvin Coolidge in A tier. Okay. Let's see this one. Coolidge in B tier. Okay, this one's fine. Coolidge in C tier. I think that's still overrating him, but whatever. Let's see this one. Coolidge in A tier. Like, what is going on? They'll put Coolidge in A tier, and then they'll turn around and put, like, FDR in S tier. Like, these two are, like, diametrically opposed to each other. It doesn't make sense. Like, I know people want to be like, oh, I can't make my tier list political. Dog, it's a presidential tier list. It's, by definition, political. Like, you can try to be apolitical, but it just doesn't work. So, yeah, Coolidge, and I think bottom of D plus is probably fine. All right. I'm going to put Hoover below Coolidge just because what he did as president was worse than what Coolidge did. Let's see. FDR. FDR was obviously president during World War II, in charge of the New Deal. I mean, do I have to even go into details about like what the New Deal had? I mean, banking reform. Let's just do it. FDR, domestic. I mean, this stuff is insanely transformative. I mean, yeah, banking and finance reforms. Let's see, created the Federal Emergency Relief Administration. Basically made immediate payments to the unemployed. Basically the first unemployment type stuff. Civilian Conservation Corps. Planting trees, building bridges, cleaning up beaches. Civil Works Administration. Including the creation of airports and roads. That's insane. But it only lasted 4 months. Okay. Let's see. Offering cash assistance to farmers. Let's see. National Recovery Administration, Public Works Administration. Let's see. Let's see. Building schools, hospitals, and airports. Yep. They also created cultural projects like theaters, developed music, literature, and history. Yep. Yeah. Like, actually insane. Let's see. Obviously handled the World War II very well, very effectively. Yeah. I just think there's a lot. Like, it's so much I can't even talk about it all. Otherwise, I would spend like an hour just talking about this one president. The bad, though, is obviously like internment. It's pretty bad. So I think A plus though. Like, he's just insanely transformative. Truman, he's the one that actually ends the war. He continues some of the New Deal policies. His is called a fair deal. He ends segregation in the military. He effectively intervened in the Korean War. He established the Truman Doctrine. He does the Berlin Airlift. He does the Marshall Plan and rebuilt Japan. I think he's actually better than FDR. Like, he continues a lot of the good stuff that FDR does, but he doesn't do the bad thing of, like, I don't know, internment. And he's also more, like, he's got better race relations than what FDR had. So, A plus tier. Transformative. Creates a new world order where America is the leader of the free world. Like, that's the whole idea of the American president being the most powerful person in the world happens with Truman, not FDR. So, although I think if FDR didn't die, he would have done some of those same things that Truman does. But I don't think he would have desegregated the military. I don't think he would have pursued civil rights legislation the way Truman does. So those are things that Truman does that FDR doesn't. So, and Truman didn't do internment. He actually ends it. So I think Truman's better. Not a whole tier better, though. Eisenhower, he has a pretty bad record on immigration. There's a slur towards Mexicans that is a result of his anti-immigration campaign. So that's very bad. Outside of that, he continues Truman Doctrine of foreign policy. I don't think he's anywhere near as successful as Truman himself, though, when it comes to foreign policy. But he does pursue civil rights actually more effectively than Truman. Like, he's the one that sent federal troops to escort that one girl to school for desegregation. He starts using nuclear power for energy, and he actually stops nuclear proliferation to an extent, and expands education reform to increase education funding for the sciences, math and sciences. So I think it's pretty good. I think most things are pretty good here, but nothing to the level of, like, Truman. Oh, and then also you have to take into consideration he was the military guy that was in charge of the European front, which is huge. So I think A tier, if you consider that, which I will. JFK, let's see, was in charge of expanding NASA. That led us into winning the space race. Pursued some Civil Rights Acts legislation. What else did he do? I know a lot of his accomplishments get done, like a lot of the stuff that he was trying to do gets done under LBJ. Let's see. Increased the minimum wage. Let's see. Passed some watered down versions of Civil Rights Acts. Yeah. That's pretty okay. Foreign affairs. There's the Bay of Pigs, which is pretty bad. Let's see. Expanded nuclear programs. This is when the Berlin Wall starts to get created. Created the Peace Corps. It's pretty good. There's just nothing transformative about JFK. I think B+, honestly. I think he gets overhyped. Like Eisenhower, you could say is transformative in that he created the federal highway system, which has a lot of flaws. And I say that as someone who's like a big fan of, public transportation, walking and biking instead of riding cars. But at the time, I mean, it massively expanded our economy. I think you can do both. I think you can do, have a really expansive highway system and also have great public transit. So yeah, I think JFK and B+, Eisenhower and A, Truman and A+ is fine. LBJ, Civil Rights Act legislation, insane. Let's see, the Great Society stuff is insane, like Social Security and just a lot of like, let's just go here, okay? LBJ domestic, the Great Society, establishing the National Endowment for the Arts, National Endowment for Humanities, Highway Safety Act, Public Broadcasting Act, let's see, consumer protections. Let's see, massive federal aid for elementary and secondary education. Let's see, the war on poverty. Let's see, community action program. That's pretty good. Let's see what else they do. Head Start program for early education. Yeah, millions of Americans raised themselves above the poverty line. The percentage of Americans that were considered at poverty went from 20% to 12%. That's crazy. Cut poverty in half, basically. And then Civil Rights Act. So, let's start here. Cut poverty in half. Insanely good race relations. Transformed cultural and humanities type stuff. And then there's the Vietnam War. Vietnam War is an absolute stain on his presidency. So I think B+. I don't know, maybe I could do A-. I don't know. I think Vietnam War is like insanely bad though, because of the Vietnam War, it leads to America losing its moral high ground on the world stage. And then it also leads to people just not trusting their own government at home. And so because they're not trusting their own government, they're not trusting a lot of the good things that he was doing in terms of going on to like tackling the war on poverty. So yeah, I think B+ is probably fine for now. Nixon created the EPA, created Amtrak. What else did Nixon do? Let's see. Created OSHA, created the National Oceanic Atmosphere Administration, expanded the Clean Air Act, the Noise Control Act. That's crazy. Marine Mammal Protection, Endangered Species Act, Safe Drinking Water. Yeah, all great stuff. And then there's Watergate. Let's see, Foreign Affairs, détente with China and Soviet Union, withdrawal from Vietnam. Although he did expand into Cambodia, it's pretty bad. So, let's see. Watergate. Watergate would make him a failed president, looking at that alone. But then, you've got EPA, OSHA, détente. I think C+ is probably fine. C+ or B-. C+ for now. I think Watergate is like insanely bad. Again, that is leading to distrust with government. Maybe B-. I don't know. Also got us off the gold standard, which I have mixed feelings on. I don't know. B- or C+. I'll do C+. Comment below if you think I should go higher or lower. Ford, he does the Helsinki Accords, which is good for foreign policy. It starts to normalize relationships with Eastern Europe and Russia. But then he pardons Nixon. And I actually view pardoning Nixon worse than Watergate itself, actually. Because, distrust in government is one thing. But the idea that a president is above the law just because you don't want to hurt his feelings or whatever, like, that's just insanely bad. I think I'm going to put him in C. Next is Jimmy Carter. Exacerbates the hostage crisis with Iran, which to this day, Iran is now our number one geopolitical enemy in the Middle East. Is probably worse for Americans' safety than any other country in the world besides China. Let's see. Implemented the most civil service reform out of any president besides Hayes. So that's pretty good in terms of like the protections for government employees. Creates the Department of Education, so that's pretty good. Fails to address the stagflation. Also, Ford also failed to address stagflation. So, and then he also starts the tradition of politicians trying to garner the support of the white evangelicals as a voting bloc. He starts some of the policies of curtailing government regulations and government welfare spending, the curtailing of the Great Society. Like, he's like the start of the conservative Democrat movement. I think with that in mind, I think I'll do C+. Maybe C. Yeah, I think C. I think he's actually worse than Nixon. For when it comes to foreign affairs, especially. So, I think C. I think Reagan. Reagan. The lefty in me wants to just put him in like D and leave it at that. But I do have to understand that, yes, he did a lot of bad things like cutting welfare expenditures, the war on drugs, failing to adequately address the AIDS crisis. There are some foreign policy mishaps, but like basically being one of the main reasons why the Cold War comes to an end is huge. And then there's some good stuff too. Like he did some really good immigration reform, making it easier to immigrate and also granting amnesty to immigrant workers. It was pretty good. He also paid reparations to the Japanese Americans who had been imprisoned during the internment camps. It's crazy that it takes this long to do that, by the way. What else did he do? Reagan, domestic. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. Tax and budget stuff. Yep, he cut taxes. We already know that. There's the recession. That's pretty bad. That's funny. Some social conservatives were dismayed by Reagan's retreat on Bob Byrne. Okay, that's crazy. The Reagan boom raised more people out of poverty than any similar boom since World War II. That's pretty good. I think he actually handled the economy well in terms of what was needed at the time. I think the fact that the Republican Party thinks that they need to do what he was doing all the time is bad. But overall, I think he's better than Carter. I think he's better than Ford. I think he's better than Nixon even. I don't know. I'll keep him here for now. There's a lot of bad. I think there's one thing I had to think about, though, is that we went from scandal with Vietnam, stagflation, scandal with pardoning of Nixon. Oh, yeah, and Nixon, Watergate. And then pardoning of Nixon. And then to Iran hostage crisis. Americans were not proud to be American. And, like, they were not proud of their government. And then they went from that to Reagan. And he did kind of make it, you know, like the feel-good vibes, you know, of the 80s. He was actually kind of instrumental in that. I mean, he was an actor, so he was good at that. Again, the economic boom expanded vigorously. Like, yeah, mixed record and deregulation. Okay. Yeah, I think there's a lot there to like, you know, like the vibes do kind of matter with the presidency. Then there's H.W. Bush. He was instrumental for the end of the Cold War. He passed the American Disabilities Act. He was in charge of the Persian Gulf War. Let's see, what else did he do? That's basically the main things. Oh, and expanded the Clean Air and Clean Water Act, which is all very, very important. I don't think any of that is transformative, though. Is it? Like, it's good. It's great, even. But is it transformative? I don't know. It kind of is. You know, American with Disabilities Act is transformative. I'll put him in here for now. Then there's Bill Clinton. I think Bill Clinton is... I mean, he did the American Family Leave Act. What else did he do? Let's see. Yeah. dropped the eligibility of legal elements for welfare. Yeah, he cut welfare spending. He did increase the minimum wage, which is good. Let's see. Failed to pass meaningful healthcare reform. Let's see. The Zelensky affairs, yep. Impeachment, yep. All bad stuff. Again, distrust in government is very, very bad. Missteps in Somalia, Rwanda, and Haiti, yeah, all very bad. Let's see. I do think that he did a good job handling, the stuff in Croatia, Serbia, and Bosnia. Created the Dayton Peace Accords. Yeah. Expanding NATO is pretty good. Not transformative, though. And also very detrimental to how Americans view their government. I think, oh my God, he also did the banking deregulation, which would later lead to the 2008 recession. Yeah, I think I'm gonna put him down here. I think he's worse than all of these ones. Okay. Next is W. Bush. Hold on, let me get some water. W. Bush. Obviously, what people know him for. 9/11. Which, there's this moment. Oh my God, I haven't been playing my music. This moment is one of the most badass moments ever recorded of any president.
America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost here, for the workers who work here, for the families who mourn. This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon. The nation sends its love and compassion to everybody who is here. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for making the nation proud. And may God bless America.
All right, back to the music that I forgot to play. Oopsie. All right, so I think the way he handled 9/11 was pretty good. In the immediate aftermath, I should say. Created the Department of Homeland Security. There's obviously a bunch of restrictions on civil liberties that come with the Patriot Act. That's pretty bad. His handling of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars was pretty botched. But I think it gets lost on some people that we needed to go to war with Afghanistan and Iraq at the time. I mean, Saddam Hussein was a dictator who was like about as bad as a dictator of like Adolf Hitler. Like he was committing genocide, you know? And if we believed in anything of all the work that we spent helping create the United Nations, I think it was very important that we got rid of Saddam Hussein. I think the commitment to nation building in Iraq was kind of a failed experiment. I think the commitment to nation building in Afghanistan was a bit of a failed experiment. Then there's obviously the '08 recession, but I think he handles it well, actually. I mean, he tried to implement banking reform before it occurred, was unable to actually get it passed. What else? Created TARP, which was, let's see, Troubled Asset Relief Program. Yeah, basically saved the banking economy, stabilized U.S. the financial system. It was actually pretty good. And then obviously he also created PEPFARs, which has saved over 26 million lives. Yeah. Which is getting repealed as we speak because of President Trump. Yeah. Let's see. Domestic affairs. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, this is HW. That's not what I want. Let's see, first African American to serve as Secretary of State. First African American woman to serve as Secretary of State. First Asian Pacific woman to serve in a presidential cabinet. Yeah, those are all pretty good. Okay. Yeah, the tax cuts were horrible, though. Tax cuts during the time of war. Not a good idea. No Child Left Behind was mixed bag. Let's see. Social Security reform, kind of bad. Supreme Court appointments, kind of bad. Handling of Hurricane Katrina, very bad. Okay, so let's do this. Let's start with the bad. Katrina, very bad. Iraq and Afghanistan, very bad. PEPFARs, great. Tax cuts, bad. TARP, good. I think C tier is fine. Okay. Then there's Obama, handled the '08 recovery very well. Created the Affordable Health Care Act, which is very, very good. I think he's botched a lot of foreign policy stuff, like, let's see. Yeah. What was the foreign policy? Okay, so we do Europe, Russia, Tensions remained as Russia pushed back against the expansion of NATO. And in 2008 called the Russian Reset, trying to improve relationships with Russia. Conceding too much to Russia. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, President dismissed Russia as just a regional power that did not pose any major security threat to the U.S. Not to the U.S. He's kind of right. Not a threat to the U.S. as much, but definitely a threat to Europe, as we now see. After Russia's military invasion in Syria, didn't really do much. Didn't Russia... Yeah. Let's see. Russia tried to annex Georgia. Yeah, and he didn't really do much there. That's pretty bad. But other than that, I mean, he orchestrated the killing of Osama bin Laden. That's pretty good. I think the Paris Climate Accords were pretty good. Healthcare reform, very, very needed. Although could have been more. I think B tier is fine. All right. The last two. The ones with the most recency bias. Let's take a look here. Hold on, let me get some more water. All right. Let's start with Trump. He's fucking over the economy with his tariffs. Like, we said this. How many of these presidents got dinged for their tariffs? He's fucking over Europe with how he's handling the Russian-Ukrainian war. Said he would get the war ended peacefully before he even actually was inaugurated. Obviously, he's failed on that promise. He's failing to protect Taiwan from China. He's destroying our relationships with countries abroad by his tariff wars, and the comments he makes when he goes there to each country. He's eroding American public trust in the government and the good things that it can do. He's getting rid of U.S. aid. He's cutting Social Security. He's cutting taxes for the rich in a time where we should not be cutting taxes. His policies are inherently inflationary. He's going to have to bail out the farmers because they're unable to sell their goods as effectively. And most of all, he's sending in U.S. troops into American cities, even though that's being deemed unconstitutional. He's getting rid of birthright citizenship, even though it's considered unconstitutional. He's using the federal government to go after his political opponents, even though, like, there's so many scandals that's, like, way worse than anything about Watergate. And it just keeps piling up. He's blowing up ships in the Atlantic Ocean that are supposedly Venezuelan, without declarations of war. He's just the worst. I mean, then you look at January 6th and how he tried to coup the government. That's an F tier president. Like, there's no way. Okay. Then there's Biden. Okay, so Biden did the recovery of the economy after COVID. He did the infrastructure bill, which did actually a lot for infrastructure. The most out of any president since LBJ. But a lot of it was held up. A lot of it didn't actually get passed through or get done. He was instrumental in getting gay marriage passed during the Obama's term as the VP. He had a very good career in Congress. Some of it was questionable, some of it was good. What else did he do? He did a lot of funding towards Ukraine, although he could have done more. Yeah. There's the genocide in Gaza, which holds him back a lot. Could have been more pressuring on Israel to stop the genocide and let aid get through. I don't know. There's a lot bad. There's a lot good too, though. I know I made a tier list earlier. What did I put him at? I put him at the top of C. So C plus. I mean, he's not as transformative. He also failed the country in that he tried to run again when he was clearly unable to, and he also allowed Trump to win. Like, I don't know, he botched the indictment process of Trump as well. So I'll have that against him. Okay, so this is my tier list so far. Let's go through and like sanity check stuff. Alright, I'm going to start from the bottom and then work my way up. So basically I'm just going to go, is Trump better or worse than this guy? And I'm just going to go back and forth. Okay, so is Trump worse than Andrew Johnson? They're about the same. I'd say Johnson's actually better. Is Johnson better than Buchanan? No. Buchanan actively let states secede from the Union, so he's definitely worse. Is Johnson better or worse than Buchanan? No. Is Johnson better or worse than Pierce? Pierce did the whole bleeding Kansas shit and then blamed Northerners for that shit, so he's definitely worse. Okay. I think this is fine. I think Jackson's definitely worse than... I think Jackson's actually better than Van Buren because of the expansion of democracy. It was good. Let's see. Okay. Next we have Hoover, Coolidge, Harding. I like this order. And then I think I'm actually going to move Tyler up for the annexation of Texas. Okay. Next we have the 3 do-nothing presidents because they all died. Harrison's obviously the worst because he died the earliest. And then there's Garfield, and then there's Zachary Taylor. I like this order. Alright, next is George Bush versus Ford. I actually think Bush is better. Next is Bush versus Carter. It's going to be a hot take, but I think Bush is better. I mean, PEPFARs and TARP is better. Next is Bush versus Biden. I think Biden's better. Next is Biden versus Reagan. I think probably Biden is better. Biden versus Nixon. Biden is better. Biden versus McKinley. Probably Biden. Biden versus Harrison. Better. Biden versus Chester Arthur. Better. Biden versus Cleveland. Probably not better. Probably fair to do that. If I do this tier list right, the majority of presidents will be in like the C plus to B range. Because it doesn't have to be a perfect bell curve, but if it were a bell curve, it'd be about B minus B. Okay. I'd say probably Cleveland is better than Biden. All right. Now, is Bush better than Reagan? Reagan effectively ended the Cold War. So definitely Reagan is better. Reagan also reestablished. Ironically, it's funny because Reagan's all this, like, he just says all these things about government being bad, about how the worst thing you could hear is I'm from the government and I'm here to help, you know, like there's all this type of stuff. But he does actually reestablish trust in the American government in a way that Carter, Ford, Nixon, LBJ couldn't do. So I think he is better than Bush in that sense. Because, I mean, it's hard to say because, like, Bush didn't have to deal with that. I mean, he dealt with, like, America after the Monica Lewinsky scandal. You know what? I am going to go on a hot take. I am going to go with this hot take and say that Bush is better. Because Bush did PEPFARs, and that's huge. I'm sorry. Doing PEPFARs is better than having some good speeches and negotiating SALT. I don't know. Both of those things are getting taken down by the current administration. Although they're finding it harder to take down PEPFARs. So, yeah, I'm going to do that. Let's see. What's the internet say? Bush versus Reagan. Who is better? Let's see what the internet says. Let's see, Bush is more divisive than Reagan. Okay. Let's see. Let's see if I can just find an article that says W. Bush is better. Just to see. How Bush bankrupted America. Yeah. Okay, that's from Cato Institute. The 10 Legacies of Reagan. Oh, this was written in 1989. Okay. This was written in 2003. Yeah, that's the hot take because people will put like Reagan in the top 10 and then they'll put W. Bush in like the bottom 5. But I think if you look at things like PEPFARs and TARP, I think he did a good job. I'm going to move him back down to C though. I think the whole thing that I saw about the most people lifted out of poverty since World War II as a result of the economic things that he was doing for Reagan. Like Reagan cut taxes when you were supposed to cut taxes. You're supposed to cut taxes when some of the worst things facing Americans are inflation or stagflation. Whereas, W. Bush cut taxes just for ideological reasons. So Reagan, so now I'm just, okay, so yeah, I think down here's fine. So now it's Reagan versus Nixon. I think Nixon, if you actually look at just what they did as a president, I think Nixon is better. But then Watergate and like the whole handling of distrust in American institutions, I think that makes Reagan better. Now Reagan versus McKinley, I think the tariffs were disastrous for McKinley. Let's see, Reagan versus Harrison. I think Reagan is better. Again, tariffs disastrous. Reagan versus Chester Arthur. I think Reagan is better. Let's see, Reagan versus Biden. Yeah, I already said that Biden is better. I mean, Biden cut child poverty in half, so that's pretty great. All right. Now we'll do Nixon. Nixon versus McKinley. Nixon is better. Nixon versus Harris. Nixon is better. Again, disastrous tariffs. Nixon versus Chester Arthur. I think they're about the same. I think Nixon's probably a little bit better. All right. Now we're doing McKinley. McKinley versus Harrison. I think Harrison is actually better because he didn't do the whole, basically a genocide in the Philippines. McKinley versus Bush. I think McKinley's better. Okay, I like that. Harrison versus Arthur. I think Arthur's better. I am going to raise Reagan up to here, as much as I hate myself for doing that. Alright, so now we've done all these ones. Now we're doing, Biden versus Cleveland. We already did that. Alright, so now Cleveland versus Fillmore. I think they're pretty similar. I think Cleveland's probably a little bit better. Cleveland versus Obama. I think Obama's better. Obama versus Clinton. I think... See, it's hard to say because, Clinton oversaw the expansion of NATO, but he also saw a lot of foreign policy failures, but so did Obama. And then Clinton also had the Lewinsky scandal, which harms trust in American institutions and government. He also did banking deregulation. I think I'm going to put Obama above him. Obama versus Taft. I think Taft is better. No major failures. No major accomplishments, but also, you know what? Obama's better than Taft. Because people underestimate how valuable the American Healthcare Reform Act was. Obama versus Madison. I think, as president, I think Obama is actually better. But I think Madison should just get the credit for creating the Bill of Rights. So, let's see. Madison versus LBJ. LBJ is better. LBJ versus JFK. LBJ is better. LBJ versus Hayes. I think Hayes is better. Hayes versus John Quincy Adams. I think Hayes is better. I think LBJ is better than John Quincy Adams too. I think JFK is better than John Quincy Adams. Actually, no, I think John Quincy Adams gets a lot of... I don't know, he gets looked over when he shouldn't be. He was really good. Hayes versus H.W. Bush. I think H.W. Bush was better. H.W. Bush versus Wilson. I think Wilson is better. Wilson versus Grant. I think Wilson's better. Wilson versus Polk. I think Wilson is better. Alright. H.W. versus Grant. I think H.W. is better. H.W. versus Polk. I think H.W. is better. Alright. Wilson versus Eisenhower. Eisenhower is better. Eisenhower versus Teddy. I think Teddy is better. Teddy versus Monroe. think Monroe is better. Monroe versus Jefferson. Probably Monroe is better. Teddy versus Jefferson. Probably Teddy is better. Eisenhower versus... You know what? Eisenhower isn't as transformative as any of these presidents. He's kind of like a continuing the legacy type of president. So I'm going to put him in A-. Alright. Jefferson versus Teddy. Yeah, we already established that. Teddy's better. Teddy versus Monroe. Monroe is better. Monroe versus Adams. I think. Let's see. I think Monroe is probably actually better. I don't know. Kind of like the same. I think Adams establishing peaceful transfer of power is huge. So I'm going to put him there for now. Alright. Adams versus FDR. FDR is better. FDR versus Truman. I already talked about how Truman is better. Truman versus Washington. I actually think Truman is better, but I'm going to give the Washington the edge for leading the Continental Army and the convention for the Constitution. So, alright, I think I got my order here. From best to worst, we got Lincoln, Washington, Truman, FDR, Adams, Monroe, Teddy, Jefferson, Eisenhower, Wilson, H.W., Polk, Grant. I think I might move Grant down. I think I'm going to move Polk down too. I think I'm going to move... okay. Anyways, Polk, Grant, Hayes, LBJ. I'm going to move HW down too. Okay. Hayes, LBJ, John Quincy Adams, JFK. Almost want to move JFK down too. That's fine. JFK, Madison, Obama, Taft, Clinton, Cleveland, Fillmore, Biden, Reagan, Nixon, Chester Arthur, Harrison, McKinley, W, Carter, Ford, Zachary Taylor, Garfield, William Henry Harrison, Tyler, Fillmore, Coolidge, Hoover, Jackson, Van Buren, Johnson, Trump, Pierce, Buchanan. Okay. I think this is my tier list. You know what? I think I almost want to move Eisenhower down. Nah, he gets the credit for overseeing the war on the European front. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's perfect. Literally, to be an A tier or S tier, you have to be top 10. And Wilson is the very bottom of the top 10. Hold on. There's a video I watched on Woodrow Wilson, so I'm going to give this cred out, called Woodrow Wilson, Great President. Woodrow Wilson, the worst great president. It's so crazy. All the fucking... My absolute least president, Woodrow Wilson. Like, all these guys who know, like, surface level understanding of Wilson. A lot of it's even fake. Like, this fucking most corrupt president, Woodrow Wilson, is, like, fake history bullshit. Woodrow Wilson is so much better than people give him credit for. Let's see. Let's see if I like this order. I think I'm going to chip away here and put JFK in B, John Quincy Adams in B. I'm going to chip up here and move Cleveland into... You know what? I'll keep moving now. Okay, so I want the C tier to only be the 3 presidents who died early in office. And so I'm either going to move presidents up or down. I think I'll do up. And then I'll move... Okay. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so the majority of presidents should be in this B minus C plus range. If we're looking at like a bell curve, which is not going to be perfect bell curve, but I think I think I'll move Clinton down. I think I'll move Nixon. Okay. Yeah, I think I'll keep it at like this. Trying to keep this video under 2 hours. Kind of crazy. What were some other... I know there's a bunch of other tier list videos, like presidential tier list. Let's see how I compare. Oh my god, this guy made their tier list 4 hours long. Okay. Let's see how they... Oh my god, Coolidge in the top 3? Mr. Beat. What? Okay, like this is largely inoffensive. Let's see, B tier. Like, what? Why is Garfield in B? He should be in C. Okay, whatever though. C tier. LBJ in C tier. You know what? That's... Fuck it. That's fair. Whatever. Botching Vietnam. Insane. Just gonna ignore Great Society. Okay. Let's see, D tier. Largely inoffensive. F tier. Wilson at F tier. Okay. I mean, the most egregious things is Coolidge top 3. Let's see. LBJ and C tier is kind of crazy. Let's see. And Wilson at the very bottom of F is just insane. Actually insane. Okay. What are some other tier list videos? Okay, this guy made his tier list.
Hey, what's up, guys? So obviously, I encourage you to do your own research.
Wow. Truman is only good. Okay. Bad? It's got... Okay. Wilson isn't terrible. That's just not true. Hayes is not bad. Like, this is just untrue. Okay. Whatever. Okay, let's see what this guy's tier list is. Rave Spectre.
Some stuff just costs more.
Oh my god, bro, these fucking ads.
This summer on Kayak, download now.
Howdy, my fellow Americans, and the biggest takeaway from this is, with all that considered,
Okay, there we go. Okay. Let's see what this guy's got. Okay. It looks like he doesn't have them in order within their tiers. So it goes for S tier, it's Washington, Lincoln, Teddy, just because that's the order of when they were president. So this is not in order within their tiers. Okay. Let's see. Anything crazy that stands out? FDR in B tier. And yet Coolidge is also B tier. Like, why? It's just crazy to me. That's just actually crazy to me. But whatever. Okay, so let's see. Where does he have Reagan? Reagan in C tier? Where do I have Reagan? B minus. Okay. He has. Okay. I think this guy's bell curve distribution is a bit different because he doesn't have all the pluses and minuses. I think without pluses and minuses, your bell curve sits center around B tier, and you'll have a lot more in the A tier. But because I have the pluses and minuses, and I only wanted one in S tier, I think my bell curve kind of centers around that C plus B minus range. Let's see. Jackson in C tier. That's crazy. Trump in C tier? Same tier as Reagan? We think Trump and Reagan are comparable? We think, okay. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Alright. Let me do one last pass through really quick, and then we'll be done. Okay, it's Lincoln versus Washington. Lincoln's better. Washington versus Truman. Washington's better. Truman versus FDR. Truman's better. FDR versus Adams. FDR's better. Monroe versus Adams. I'm actually going to put Monroe above Adams. Even though Monroe's a slave owner, Monroe Doctrine is just too good. Adams versus Teddy. I think Teddy's better, actually, when I think about it. Let's see. Adams versus Jefferson. I think Louisiana Purchase is actually kind of huge. We'll just say they're tied. Let's see. Jefferson versus Eisenhower. Jefferson's better. Yep. I like that. HW versus Polk. Yeah, Polk is worse. Polk versus Grant. You know what? I'm going to say it. Grant is better than Polk. Polk versus Hayes. I'm going to say it. Hayes is better. Polk versus LBJ. I'm going to say it. LBJ is better. Actually, I'm going to say Polk is better. LBJ versus John Quincy. John Quincy's worse. John Quincy versus JFK. John Quincy's better. JFK versus Madison. JFK's better. Madison versus Obama. You know what? I'll say Obama's better. Let's see. Madison versus Taft. I'll say Madison's better. Taft versus Clinton. Say Taft is better. Clinton versus Cleveland. I'll say say Cleveland's better. Clinton versus Fillmore. Clinton's better. Let's see. Fillmore versus Biden. I'll say Fillmore's better. Biden versus Reagan. Biden is better. Biden versus Nixon. Reagan's better. Nixon versus Chester Arthur. think Nixon is better. So I'll move Nixon up. Arthur versus, because Arthur had the very bad immigration bill. Arthur versus Harrison, I think Arthur's better. Harrison versus McKinley, I think Harrison's better. McKinley versus W, I think McKinley's better. Actually, yeah. W versus Carter. I think if you do take into slight consideration what they do after their presidency, I think Carter is slightly better. Let's see. W versus Ford. I think W is better. No, actually, even including, like, I'm sorry, Habitats for Humanity is great. PEPFAR saved 26 million lives. So, yeah, that's better. Let's see. Obama's actually better than or not Obama. W is better than McKinley, with that in mind. W is also probably better than Harrison. Yeah. Yeah. I'll do that. Okay. I think Ford is probably better than McKinley. We'll keep him there for now. Those are the 3 presidents that died. Traitor president. Presidents who helped contribute to the Great Depression. Genocidal president, but who expanded democracy. Genocidal president. And Civil War president, or presidents who led to a civil war, plus Trump. Okay. Download image. There it is. This is your, let me scroll out so you can see it all at once. Go ahead and feel free to screenshot my presidential tier list. I think this is the final list. With that said, thank you for checking out my channel. Don't forget to do all the algorithm things. Sorry that this had to be a 2-hour long video, but that's just what it had to be. And with that said, I am going to end it here.